LiveNOW is Fox television station's 24/7 digital streaming news channel. Run out of Fox's newsrooms in Phoenix and Orlando, it essentially DJs news content from across the group continuously with over 100 hours of live programming a week. In just a few years, LiveNOW has picked up a long and growing list of fast distribution partners, including Tubi, Samsung TV Plus, Roku Channel, Amazon News, Freevee, Vizio, Zumo, Fubo, and YouTube, not to mention Fox Nation. Fox is not hiding this channel from viewers, Lord knows. I'm Michael Depp, editor of TVNewsCheck, and this is Talking TV. My guest today is Andrew Kraft, a senior digital journalist with LiveNOW out of Phoenix. Andrew's job is to anchor, produce, and direct many of those LiveNOW weekly hours. Coming up, we'll talk about how just one person can do all of these things simultaneously and effectively, especially when you factor in big events like the recent midterm elections, where Andrew led the channel's recent coverage. We'll be right back with that conversation. Talking TV is brought to you by Futuri, whose Post for TV podcasting system is specifically designed for the needs of TV broadcasters. Post for TV makes going from newscast to podcast an effortless transition. It enables broadcasters to create, publish, analyze, and monetize both broadcast on demand and original podcast series from the same platform. Post for TV is a powerful system for capturing podcast opportunities in a turnkey fashion. It ingests and automatically edits newscast audio for optimum fidelity and publishes blocks or full newscasts to on-demand audio platforms. You can learn more about Post for TV at futurimedia.com/post4tv. Welcome, Andrew Kraft, to Talking TV.
Michael, thanks so much for having me.
Andrew, for those who aren't familiar with it, tell us what viewers encounter when they watch this on streaming or the web. What does LiveNOW look like with news coming in from so many different directions?
Yeah, so essentially, as the digital journalist in the hot seat, I operate kind of as the captain. So really, the decision-making process is up to me about what the viewer gets to see. We have so many live pictures, live feeds coming into us from all over the country, all over the world, a lot on social media as well. And so we get to decide which stories we want to tell, what we think is top of mind, what we think is most important. And so I really love that autonomy about LiveNOW. Obviously, if it's a huge story, like, for example, yesterday, the Arizona governor's race was called LiveNOW. One of its bases is in Phoenix. And so we were really on top of that story. And so we essentially brought live to the viewers the Maricopa County press update on, ballot counting and all of that. And so the beauty also of LiveNOW is you have so much time to fill that you can show the viewers these press conferences in their entirety, no matter if they're 30, 40 minutes. Something I like to do is kind of have if it's a big event. So for example, like today, when we're recording, former President Trump is going to make this announcement at Mar-a-Lago about potential 2024 aspirations. So we'll bring a guest on ahead of that to kind of ramp up coverage and then get the guest's reaction as a recap once it's over. So, and we use Zoom as well a lot for our guests, bringing guests in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Given that this is produced in such a minimalist fashion and the source material comes in from across the group of Fox stations, how do you give it a distinct brand identity? And how would you describe that identity so that LiveNOW feels like its own autonomous news presence in some way?
Yeah, so we have kind of a slogan here: live, raw, and unfiltered. And so for the viewer watching at home, it does kind of look essentially like we're not, the broadcast networks, we're not as flashy as some might think, because we are doing it basically alone. So there is a lot on us, especially the technical aspect of it, getting the audio correct, choosing the video. We type out all of the graphics that the viewers see on the screen. And we also, control the guests' audio as well. So we have at our disposal so many of the Fox O&O reporters, the Fox News Channel correspondents, who are, wherever they are on a big story, we can ask them if they want to come on. And we've gotten a lot of feedback that, unlike kind of a cable broadcast hit that has to be like a minute 30 or 2 minutes, that reporter or correspondent could come on Live Now and can essentially tell their story a little longer, for example. So 5, 6, 7 minutes, we are kind of constrained by commercial. We try to get 4 in an hour. But sometimes if it's really a major breaking story, we let the correspondent and the host kind of just go back and forth on how important the story is. So
they'll do their hit for local, and then maybe you'll have them and interview them longer, or there'll be a longer version. The piece will be versioned. How does that play out?
Yeah, for example, so say we're speaking to a Fox 26 Houston reporter. They're done with their hit for Houston, and they kind of hop on our IFB maybe right after their hit is over. We roll their package, but we also kind of get to do an extended Q&A on the back end, diving a little deeper into the story, letting the reporter kind of show us their reporting a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So do you draw from sources beyond the Fox-owned stations? And if so, who else?
Yeah, essentially, since I've been here for 2 years, we rely mostly on the Fox O&O and the Fox News Channel correspondents. But a lot of times, if I have to fill a gap, if say, one of those reporters isn't available, I look elsewhere. So a lot of print outlets, radio outlets, local journalism, just because, those people know the story just as well, if not better, than some of our, Fox reporters. And so we try to rely on that to fill those gaps if someone's not available. So a lot of times I DM reporters on Twitter, I DM experts on Twitter, cold email, basically source gathering. And we've here at Live Now established a lot of great relationships that way. Subject matter experts, policy analysts. I'm essentially my own booking department at Live Now. So.
And you're doing all this while you're on the air, right? In many cases?
Yeah, I mean, before I go on the air, I kind of average, 4 hours a day non-consecutively on the air. But that preparation time, I'm calling people who want to come on and talk about it. And I know I kind of keep harping on, length is the beauty of it. And that's kind of the beauty of Live Now is if you're really into a story, if you're really passionate about a subject area, we do have the time where, for example, since the war in Ukraine broke out in February, we've almost had nightly about 30 minutes every night on updates to the war in Ukraine with national security experts who we really heavily relied on. So obviously Live Now did not have someone in Ukraine throughout the duration of this war, but I think our coverage has just been as good. So.
Okay. So, I mean, basically you're the band and the roadie and the sound engineer and selling the merch and kind of producing the whole thing. I mean, is it essentially all you, or do you have anybody backing you up? Is anybody reinforcing you while you're on a shift?
Yeah, and that's kind of the novel approach, Michael, to Live Now, where that is what makes it so different. So yeah, I used to be in the field. I used to be a one-man band, MMJ. So now I'm kind of one-man banding a show, kind of what you were alluding to. I mean, we do have producers. They are very helpful. They assist us when we're in the hot seat. They also book. They also prepare for us, hand us scripts, help us formulate questions when we're talking to the guests. But a lot of the decision-making process is for the DJ up in the chair. And so when breaking news happens, yes, they are very, very helpful. But like I said, I kind of have a rundown in my head. There's no, line producer. There's no typed out rundown. It's kind of what I want to go to next. I have a general plan before I go up there about what the biggest stories are. And then I kind of execute it that way with, events, live reporter hits, and expert hits too. So it's very dynamic, but it is very unorthodox.
Yeah, highly. I mean, so you trained as an MMJ, so you've already got multiple skill sets for story production that way. But this is a whole other set of skills. I mean, you've got, the control room essentially as well. I mean, there's a lot of, and then you have to be able to bifurcate your attention or trifurcate your attention to be watching all these other things. So I guess I'd love for you to paint a picture of while you're live on the desk, how pragmatically you are able to attend to all the things that you need to do at once in order to pull off this kind of newscast.
Yeah, it's definitely a work in progress, and it does take time to kind of hone that skill, prioritize your time. You always have to be thinking about what is next. So say, for example, something ends, it's 12 minutes long. What am I going to next? Because there's really no, person saying, okay, we need to hit this right now next. It's completely up to me up there. And so, for example, with breaking news, we are at LiveNOW a lot of times the first people on it, because say we'll just put up a bump shot, or we'll put up a tweet, and we'll just keep talking. We also have no teleprompter. It's completely ad lib, which is something I had to really focus on and learn, because I had never anchored before this. I was always in the field, and so no teleprompter is very, very daunting. It's very, very intimidating. You have to kind of just surrender yourself to the camera. It's almost like you're on stage and you're speaking to that little black box. So obviously I refer to my notes a lot, but it's very freewheeling, almost, in the sense that you have to prepare so much for the stories, like 10 to 12 stories a day. And if you know just a few bullet points on them, you can get by through that. But it is challenging.
No doubt. I mean, a press conference has got to be a great relief to you, because you can at least step away, pay attention. Those go on for 15 minutes, half hour or so, gives you a little time to pull some other things together, right?
Yeah, it does buy us a lot of time. I can prepare for my next guest hits, my next expert hits. I can read up on something. I can, use the bathroom, or go print something that I need. But yeah, when you're up there, you're in control. There's no, person in your ear telling you what to do. It's all on you. Right now, I don't, and you probably can't see it, but I have a board in front of me. It's called a TriCaster. There's a lot of buttons. There's a lot of lights. And so the muscle memory of that goes a long way, but it takes, 6 to 8 months to really master. And then you can kind of look at it without even needing to like reference it down here. But I mean, I think of the viewer a lot of times, if they're watching LiveNOW, they'll see me look away, look down, not be looking at the camera, because I have to focus on all of that.
So yeah, I wonder, like, their level of expectations for how polished it could conceivably be, given that you have to do so many things at once. There's got to be a little bit less slick veneer on this than your standard newscast.
No, that's definitely true. And I'm very transparent with the viewer about that. I will say that, we're waiting to get a reporter. I have to check in with them and do a mic check with them. They've just called in. I'll put them on standby. I'll throw up maybe a shot of the U.S. Capitol if we're talking politics, and then I'll bring them in. So there are those moments where I think the viewer is a little bit forgiving. If you've explained to them that you're going to get this set up, we're going to have this story next, that they're going to wait for it. So I do a lot of previewing of what's to come this hour, who we'll be speaking with, and top headlines like that.
So they do give you a lot of latitude about, given they understand you're doing so much at once.
I think so.
When it does go sideways, what does that look like? How sideways does it go?
Sure. There are, backup options that we have, and we have experienced that, where something technical happens and we have to just kind of think on the fly, correct it as quick as possible. Sometimes, I'll go to commercial break just to give myself a breather, just to give myself to come back from that. But yeah, it does happen. We have to think about that. And thankfully, everyone in the newsroom off the desk is also, working to rectify and correct that as well. So that's what we say: live, raw, and unfiltered. I mean, it happens frequently where, for example, you're on something aerially and the Skyfox chopper flies away, or something goes to color bars, and you just get off it very quickly. Say if we get that shot back, we'll bring you that story. We'll monitor that. So doing this for 2 years has really taught me kind of how to get out of those situations, but it does happen.
You seem like a guy who's pretty unrankleable, so you could probably roll with a lot. Now, I mentioned at the top that you were the main journalist on the desk for coverage of the recent midterms, and I'm told that LiveNOW carried 44 hours straight of live coverage of the midterms. How the hell was that even possible?
Yes, so we stayed up all night. We have an Orlando kind of East Coast outpost as well. They took it over in the very early morning hours. We did this similarly with Hurricane Ian as well. That was really the first time we tried 24 hours straight. But yeah, it took a lot of planning. I mean, months of planning for the election, just having guests on every hour, reporter hits for our O&O stations and our Fox News channel correspondents who were at these candidate watch parties, these election night rallies. So yeah, it took a lot of planning. And then, of course, there were so many candidates that we relied a lot on concession speeches, victory speeches, and then, polling experts, political strategists. So a lot of the booking I did, as well as, for experts. And then we have, a managing editor, executive producers who also help with the booking. So I say it is, a one-man show essentially, but there is a lot of assistance and a lot of help.
Mhm. And some of that help now comes from Orlando. So this started in Phoenix. Phoenix was carrying the torch alone for this for quite some time. Now Orlando's come in, in the last year or so as sort of the second desk here. So how does that work? I mean, do you sort of pass the baton across the country at a certain, like a shift change, or is it continuously going back and forth between Phoenix and Orlando?
So right now, there is just one kind of baton change, if you will. It happens, in the early morning hours, I guess West Coast time. Yeah, we just kind of transition once. Say if there's breaking news or something, or they want to keep it a little later because they're in something. It is flexible like that. There's talk of maybe transitioning back and forth periodically throughout the day. Right now, it's just one essentially cutoff, and then Phoenix takes over, and we do the duration of the rest of the day. And then that allows our Orlando digital journalists to call sources, do pre-recorded interviews. A lot of that time is spent creating our own content. We have the opportunity to sometimes take the O&O stations, their coverage for big breaking stories. I know, for example, like Darrell Brooks is being sentenced today. And so if Fox 6 Milwaukee, for example, was in live coverage of that, we might take their coverage for just a little bit. And so they kind of, add to and circumvent some of our coverage that way if we maybe need a breather, or we can kind of supplant our coverage that way.
And there was talk, I think, a while back of maybe LA as a third desk here. Is that still in the cards?
I don't believe so, no. But yes, there was talk of that a little bit early on. But right now, Phoenix and Orlando, the two main hubs, focused in really, really strong O&O markets and stations. We're based in Fox 10 Phoenix's studio headquarters, and Orlando's at Fox 35 Orlando. So.
Right. So for you personally, and you're a young guy with a lot of energy, and people who might be looking at you as an example of, how sustainable is this kind of approach to the work? I mean, MMJ is a lot of roles at once, but this is sort of metastasized beyond that. How sustainable is it for you, and what are the upshots for you personally of working in this way?
Yeah, for me, I really enjoyed being in the field, and I didn't know something like this was available. So I wanted to try my hand at it. People were like, you should try anchoring. You should see how you like it. And I've really, fallen in love with the format. So, if I ever in my future career had to go to something a little more traditional, it would be kind of hard to fit back into that box of maybe like a traditional newscast, because this is so innovative and novel and different. Obviously, you wouldn't have as much time as you would in a traditional broadcast. And I'm always talking about LiveNOW to potential candidates, to new hires, telling them, it is a lot of work. You have to really diligently work at it. You have to surrender yourself to the news. You can't kind of leave here at 5 o'clock and put your blinders on, because you have to get in that hot seat the next day knowing what happened in the interim, because you got to talk about it. So I thought, and I think that is what's really the most challenging part, is doing your research, doing your preparation, so you can tell the viewer that you know the story, even though you're doing everything else. So
You always have to be soaking in the news water. You can never dry off.
you do. Yeah, I mean, that's so true. Because I think the viewer can tell maybe if you were just thrown in on a story and you were just kind of getting caught up on it. I think in addition to all the tech aspect of it, you would be able to tell a little bit. So
you said you've been doing this for about 2 years. What have you learned, and what are you still learning about how to do this kind of anchoring and producing well?
I think when I came in, the production aspect of it was the biggest kind of baptism by fire. I think I am confident in my news judgment, but translating that into how I'm going to work my way through these hours and tell the viewer about what all these stories are. I think that took a lot of learning and trial by error about what to do and what not to do. But yeah, there are still things that I want to work on personally when I get up there in the chair each and every day about keeping it moving, keeping the pace moving. And that's kind of what I've gathered. If I can tell maybe that the viewers aren't necessarily into something that I'm playing, that's 40 minutes long, I'll get out of it and I'll say, we'll get back to that a little bit later if there are any more developments. And then I'll keep it moving with another top story and another top story. So I guess getting that viewer feedback has helped me a little bit kind of do what I do up here in saying, all right, well, this maybe not be working as much as the last story we did. So the other thing that I haven't mentioned, which I really like about it is, we are limited commentary and limited opinion. And so I get a lot of feedback from viewers essentially saying, oh, wow, LiveNOW Fox is just straight news. It's not kind of a lot of punditry or a lot of opinion. Obviously, we do bring people on talking about politics last Tuesday night, a week ago, about the election, about Republicans, Democrats, who's going to keep it, who's going to lose it. But that's definitely not the focus. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from viewers is that's really what they like about it.
Mm-hmm. So never any panels.
No, we rarely have panels. I think the first panel we did was last week. So,
oh, really? So one guest at a time typically, or do you ever bring in a panoply of guests?
So we tried it really for the first time last week on election night. We did bring in 2 guests on Zoom. Weldon Watson, our technical director, made kind of a 3-box graphic. And so we did try that. And it worked. It really worked. I kind of had to play referee a little bit, but that is definitely something I would like to do in the future. But as far as, having 6, 7 people on panels ad nauseum talking about whatever, no, that's not really our format.
The world has enough of that to begin
Yeah.
with. Okay. Well, Andrew, I'm surprised you even had the time to spare for this conversation. So I thank you for it.
No, thank you, Michael. I appreciate it.
And so that's our time for today. We will be back soon with all kinds of new smart conversations about the business of broadcasting. Until then, you can watch past episodes of Talking TV at TVNewsCheck.com and on our YouTube channel. See you next time. A new episode of Talking TV is available most Fridays on TVNewsCheck.com. You can also listen and subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify.